from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Hey everyone. Good morning. Happy Wednesday, hump day, the day of the week where we look at Monday and go, God, I'm so glad it's over, but we're so close to Friday. We can touch it, but we're not quite there yet. February 24th, 2021, our practitioner brief for today. We've got a lot of stories coming your way, including a VMware update, a Russian hacking group update, and more importantly, the SolarWinds update from three different points of view, three different stories, but three stories we as practitioners can take into our companies today, into our executive team today, to our board today, downstream to our SOC analysts today. A lot of things coming from SolarWinds yesterday. We'll get into that here in just a moment as well. Today's show, folks, you can watch us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So comment, subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform after the fact, tune in live at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time each and every single day, Monday through Thursday. We don't do this on Friday. I do an impromptu kind of tech corner on Fridays live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. You can tune into that as well. Today, CISO Talk with Ryan Glover will be dropping at around 2:30 p.m., so you won't want to miss it. If you have not subscribed to our CISO Talk podcast, make sure to do so as well. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at KnowBe4 and Wistic. Thank you so much for your support. You can see more about them in the show notes as well. I'm grateful for our sponsors that support our program. Before we get into all the news of the day, join me for a ceremonial cup of coffee. I'm having my usual double espresso, extra strong, because I've changed my hours a little bit and I'm on like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. So enjoy. Man, I love coffee on the morning. All right, let's get right into this. So a critical VMware vCenter server flaw can expose organizations to remote attacks, according to VMware on Tuesday, that informed customer that its vCenter server product is affected by a critical vulnerability that can be exploited by an attacker to execute commands with elevated privileges. The vCenter, if you're unaware of it, is a vCenter server, and it's a management software designed to provide centralized platforms for controlling VMware vSphere environments. The critical vulnerability, which was discovered by Positive Technologies researcher Mikhail Kalishnikov, impacts a vCenter server plugin used by the vSphere client. The flaw, which is tracked as CVE 2021-219er72 with a CVSS score of 9.8, can be exploited by an attacker with network access to port 443 to execute commands with unrestricted privileges on the underlying operating system that hosts the vCenter server, according to the VMware advisory. The cybersecurity firm says that more than a quarter of these devices are located in the US, followed by Germany, France, China, the UK, Canada, Russia, Taiwan, Iran, and Italy. There's a bunch of notes here from Kalishnikov, who's been credited for a medium severity server-side request forgery flaw in the vCenter as well. VMware has also informed users about the CVE 2021-219er74, which is a high severity heap overflow in the ESXi that can be exploited by an attacker with network access to port 427 to execute arbitrary code. The issue was reported by VMware to VMware by Lucas Long of Trend Micro's Zero Day Initiative, but there's not yet news about that. It's important that organizations using the affected products apply the patches or workarounds, since VMware product vulnerabilities being targeted by threat actors is not unheard of. We know this to be something. So a few things here from a risk perspective. If you use this obviously carries significant risk to your organization, number one. Number two, there are around 6,000 systems that are accessible directly from the internet. Time to do some basic blocking and tackling. If the port doesn't need to be open for the internet, close it. Add defense in depth and more security controls to those specific ports, take it offline, see if you can deactivate it for a few days if it doesn't impact business operations and still allows you to move it somewhere else. Move those specific operations that you rely on the vCenter server to do to a different server until this gets patched up. On the VMware Advisor, there's a few ideas for workarounds. You can check those out there. I want to move to our second story before we get into SolarWinds, where a Russian hacking group deploys the IronPython malware loader. So Turla's IronNet injector delivers the Comrat Trojan, according to Palo Alto's Units 42. The Russian hacking group Turla is deploying an IronPython-based malware loader as part of a new campaign. The researchers over at Unit 42 report that the new loader delivers a Comrat, a remote access Trojan, by exploiting IronPython's ability to use a .NET Framework API directly, as well as Python libraries. IronNet injector is made of an IronPython script that contains a .NET injector and one or more payloads. The report notes when an IronPython script is run, the .NET injector gets loaded, which in turn injects the payloads into its own or a remote process. The latest loader comes with the capability to obfuscate malware codes and encrypt and decrypt .NET injectors and payloads, according to the researchers. A friend of the show, Roger Grimes, is on the record here, so I wanted to bring this story up. If you haven't seen my episodes with Roger Grimes on Tech Corner, you should go back and catch. We've done two of them, one on data-driven cyber defense and a more recent one on hacking MFA. You'll want to check both of those out. So Roger Grimes says that because the .NET framework is not compatible with non-Windows users, the impact of this specific tool is likely to be very low, although it could be extremely targeted as well. On Microsoft Windows computers, Roger says it becomes yet another potential method among the myriad of options to possibly bypass or confuse anti-malware prevention and detection software. To defend Windows users, security researchers will have to parse to detect any suspicious activity, according to Roger. Anti-malware software has to be aware of this new malware injection technique and be able to handle and parse it in a way to distinguish between legitimate and malicious uses. Out of the over 100 malware programs out, there is some percentage of them that will not be upgraded to detect this sort of technique, and so it helps malware developers in general. Turla, obviously a significant player in the Russian cyber game, is out there doing this. So that's that. Now let's get into SolarWinds. Three different stories. One, NASA and FAA were also breached by the SolarWinds hackers. This according to a report by the Washington Post. The two attacks are part of a broader espionage effort targeting and compromising multiple U.S. government agencies. Both the U.S. The government has not publicly disclosed the NASA and FAA were breached. However, the agency's identities were confirmed to the Post from U.S. officials, including Ann Neuberger's White House Deputy National Security Advisor, said that 9 federal agencies were breached in total in the SolarWinds hack, and we'll get right into that here in just a moment. While the identity is anonymous, they are saying that this is likely a Russian group, and we'll get into why they think that. So according to the AP, tech firms say there's little doubt that Russia is behind the SolarWinds attack. In the first congressional hearing that took place yesterday, which we'll talk about in just a moment, folks, representatives of technology companies involved in the response described a hack of almost breathtaking precision, ambition, and scope. The perpetrators stealthily scooped up specific emails and documents on a target list from U.S. and other countries. We haven't seen this kind of sophistication matched with this kind of scale, according to Microsoft President Brad Smith, who was testifying yesterday in front of the Senate Intelligence Committees. Forensics estimate that it took over 1,000 highly skilled engineers to execute the SolarWinds breach. We've seen substantial evidence that points to Russian foreign intelligence agencies, and we have found no evidence that leads us anywhere else, meaning on their end, they kind of put this on Russia significantly. That's Microsoft's investigation. That doesn't dismiss the FireEye investigation, SolarWinds investigation, and a few others as well. Jen Psaki, who's the White House press secretary, said on Tuesday that it would be weeks, not months, before the U.S. responds to Russia. Kevin Mandia, the CEO over at FireEye, told the Senate that his company had nearly 100 people working on to study and contain the breach since it was detected in December, almost by accident, according to Kevin Mandia there. Once detected, he also says that they vanished like ghosts. Government agencies breached include the Treasury, Justice, Commerce. Obviously, we've got NASA, but there are victims around the world, including Canada, Mexico, Spain, and the UAE. The panel, which also included Sudhakar Ramakrishna, the CEO of SolarWinds, who took over the company after the breach, and George Kurtz, the president and CEO of CrowdStrike, another leading cybersecurity company, faced questions not just about the breach that occurred, but also whether victims should be legally complied to talk about disclosure, which takes me to our final story about SolarWinds, where senators were talking about mandating cyber attack disclosures. So this is a great thing in general, okay? Now, we'll say this. I was watching the hearings yesterday. I haven't seen this kind of bipartisanship and this kind of non-political fact-based hearing in, I think, like 6 or 7 years. Seriously, like, chapeau to Mark Warner, Marco Rubio. Thank you for doing the people's business in a way that people's business should be done. Now, let's get into this aspect, though. So, a few things that were being discussed by Senator Warner and Senator Rubio was that Congress should consider mandating certain type of reporting. Talking about we must improve the information sharing, something that's critical, that's been said on the Hill multiple times. The lawmakers commanded cybersecurity firm FireEye for disclosing it in December that they were the first victims of this, which essentially led. They also expressed displeasure that AWS declined to attend the hearing on Tuesday, hoping that that would have helped a little bit more. Senator John Cornyn, who's from Texas, said that he shared concern over AWS's refusal to participate in the hearing. I think that's a big mistake, he said, adding that it denies us a more complete picture of the incident. The breach, which was likely the work of Russian hackers, as we just said earlier, really does bring about that. So this is really great, taking this now into the idea that reporting might be mandated in specific situations is critical. Simply because the way reporting is done today is only if specific data is exposed, only a specific amount of data was exposed. Those things matter, so you can disclose it in some states and in others not, if depending on how you store your data. And smart companies know how to divide and conquer and store data separately so that, you know, sometimes you avoid the necessity of disclosure in the event of a cyber incident. Here's one thing, though. Let's give companies who disclose immunity if it's not pure negligence. I don't know. That's a thought. I think more companies would disclose breaches if it didn't mean that they could be subject to legal ramifications. I think the fact of the matter is most companies don't want to make a disclosure if they don't have to because of that. So if we take away the legal aspect right there, and we just address it solely on the idea of we need information, share information. The information you share cannot be used against you. It's not admissible as part of a lawsuit. It's an information sharing platform that maybe CISA runs as part of its role and increased budget post SolarWinds, where companies could report it to CISA. And CISA can then make the disclosure of the breach, maybe without really saying who the company is, might be something very effective. I know there's a tool like that that exists today in the information sharing aspect that formerly of CISA, John Felker used to run in the NKIC, but it would be cool to get something like that and make it a little bit more accessible with the IOCs and TTPs so people know what to look for and are able to react not in 2 or 3 weeks later, but rather within 24 to 48 hours. And that would be the goal, is to share information as soon as possible, kind of like what FireEye did. They set the precedent, and now that precedent has been set, we should all expect it to be the same going forward. That's it for our practitioner brief today, folks. I want to thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast later today. Ryan Glover will be joining me on CISO Talks. So you want to go and make sure to check that out. Tonight, the Tech Town Square. Eddie and I convene again tonight for a personal incident response plan. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern. You'll want to watch it right here on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Don't miss it. Do you have an incident response plan for your personal life in the event internet is cut or you don't have access to information? Tonight, we talk about that and we build our own plan on the show, so you'll want to be there. That's it, folks. This is James Azar signing off. Stay healthy and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.